Welcome to the BPM 360 podcast. I'm Russell.
And I'm Caspar. And together we will help you navigate the treacherous waters of the BPM adoption journey. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the BPM 360 podcast. My name's Caspar, your co-host, and I'm together here with Russell. My man, how are you?
Fine. Good afternoon. How are you, Caspar?
I'm good. We're back to Friday afternoon recordings like we did in the last episode, and I love it.
Yes. Are you back home or are you still traveling?
I am back home right now, which is a plus, I would say.
Okay.
But I got an interesting travel schedule for the next coming weeks ahead, so I'm really happy to be a week at home, so to speak.
That's nice.
But
That's nice.
just from that perspective, I was in Eindhoven yesterday, but that's just like an hour by car or train at the University of Technology.
Okay.
And I had an interesting conversation with two assistant professors on BPM that I'm helping to, I'm contributing to the book that they're writing around process mining and its practical applications. So that was a very interesting session in the afternoon. But that was the only travel I did this week. From time to time, that's nice.
That was more like fun as well, wasn't it?
It's a lot of fun. I mean, I just had to talk. I didn't have to do anything else. No preparation. It's just they ask questions and I answer them. And it's like, cool. We need to do this more often. So have you landed again after your holiday?
I've landed again, public holiday yesterday, so everything's fine. I had a bit of a tsunami wave of tasks to accomplish. I managed to get that done, so I'm ready for the weekend. And yeah, next week I'm traveling as well, more on-site workshops. So
oh, cool.
Back into the workshop business, which is
nice.
Which is
I love workshops. I'm doing one very close to where I live. I'm doing one in the UK next week. It's just the best fun is a workshop.
Totally.
All right, cool. All right, so let's have a conversation. Today we don't have any guests. It's just you and me, which is also fine. And the topic I would have in mind for this podcast, Russell, is the following: there is a tremendous amount of uncertainty in the world right now. There are things changing. There is let's call him an orange spray tan man somewhere across the ocean that's wreaking havoc on everything that was, I would say, set in stone and was working nicely. I think it's called diplomacy typically. But anyway, one of the outcomes of the things he's doing is that within Europe, European Union, I might need to say, but I think Europe in general, there's been sort of a wake-up call and saying we need to take charge of our own defense. And I'm not a defense expert, so we're not going to talk about the actual defense. But what I would like to do is a little bit of a mind experiment with you, Russell, today in the podcast, and just openly think about if we would apply process management principles to the question, how do we merge 27 defense forces into one? How would that look like? And what could process management deliver?
So obviously, you love your workshop modes, don't you? So
yeah, I do.
So for this topic, we're going to have to go into workshop mode.
Yes,
and,
sir.
And that's definitely so. Just think if somebody would invite us to say, "Hey, Caspar, how would you go about this?" It says, "God, I would run," and I would say, "Oh, that's very interesting. Let me think about that," and then I'll change my name. No, seriously, it would be a challenge. But and I think what is really cool about this question, so I do like it very much. First of all, I think yes, we all sit down. And we all complain, he says, why doesn't Europe get their act together and start thinking as one? And I am, for my full heart, a European person. Yeah.
Same here.
With my background and looking at the situation, I think that would be awesome if ... However, let's talk about what I think would be the way forward on this. And ultimately, and that's where I do like, if you think back to season 1, where we talked about the framework, You know, if to get this
Oh, I like that.
to get this topic really running, of course we have to think about the sponsorship first,
Yeah.
and that's and stakeholder management, where we're talking about in this context. First of all, of course, we have to have a clear sponsorship for exactly this thing happening, and that's where definitely in Europe you have your challenges of saying, how do we actually gain sponsorship here? And this is something, how many initiatives have we been in where there was a very high commitment top down, but then on the level underneath, on the stakeholder side, things started getting diluted because everybody had their own view on the use case BPM. So if I transfer that to the situation we have, I could imagine that there would be a set of leaders in Europe that could sit together and really say, we need to make this happen. We really need to, let's say, define a real vision of having one European defense. Now, politically, I think nobody really has outspoken that, but I think one of the first points would be having a very clear sponsorship, a very clear commitment that must be the ultimate goal, no matter how, yes, the French have got there, and the Germans are good there, and the English are good there. It says, no, ultimately, we all will profit from having one, consolidated defense approach on a European level.
And
so
interestingly
that's the
enough,
starting point.
Yeah. And let me just add something to it, and also to make it very clear to our listeners. The topic around the defense force is just exemplary. You could replace this with a merger and acquisition between 27 companies. Obviously very complex. Even if it's between two companies, it is rather complex, but it's exactly the same mechanism. There are sponsors. It's just a topic that happens to be really top of mind for a lot of people right now, given the things that go on in the world. So I thought that would be easier to use that as an example to talk about. So I full-heartedly agree, Russell. So executive sponsorship will be complicated, but it's doable. But you need to have somebody that steps up, and whether that's the chairwoman of the European Union, or it's the head of NATO, which happens to be a Dutch guy at the moment, who's pretty good typically in leveraging diplomacy stuff. But there's somebody that needs to step up and say, listen, we need to do this. And that person needs to find alignment and support from the rest of the main stakeholders. It's something that you do in a BPM project as well, just on a smaller scale, right?
Now, there's one thing that comes to mind there when we go in now. If we say that, okay, that's we have the starting point we have there, and we have budget because always, in politics, budget's always something, so take up some loan somewhere.
Seems to be less of a problem right now, but anyway.
Well, and then what I do quite like about this discussion, think of it the following: if typically in these standardization initiatives or merger initiatives, once the sponsorship is clear and the objective is clear, the project team that really works then top down on defining the scope and from a process management perspective, decomposing the strategy into what we need to make this operational. Process management doesn't jump down to the detail of says, oh, how do you do this in Italy, or how do you do it in Germany, and how do you do it there? First of all, it's more like a generalized, what are the domains which we have to, what is this, let's define, what does this common defense strategy look like on an operative level? What domains do we have to talk about? For example, the purchasing. I'd say in our normal word, purchasing, but is a big topic around the European Union, the defense, that everybody's doing their own, they have their own, what's it called, the research and development around products. So they have, the Waffensysteme, they have many. America has 2, Europe has 11, and, defense systems. So, and then the purchasing there, it's like every country for itself, and they have their own complicated processes. So it's not standardized. They're not doing any volume like say, leveraging the volume as they could by doing like European procurement, European, then managing and balancing the demands across the whole of Europe and seeing, hey, why are you, overstocking this, and we've already got that as well, but we're missing something else. So the whole, from a classical like purchasing, what do we need, how do we source it, and how can we actually also, to a certain extent, also on if you were to say the manufacturing, on that level of industrialization, say the production, the manufacturing of the goods, how much do we outsource? How much do we make ourselves? And if we make ourselves, how do we streamline down to products that we don't have like 5 different production processes and 5 different products that are all competing with each other? So consolidating the market there. So all these aspects that where any normal big industry would, even with the merger acquisition, would directly look at what are the no-brainer domains that we want, that we can standardize and have a very high leverage. Procurement's the one I would say jumps to my mind. Then the sourcing, and which can be in or outsourced, and the demand, consolidating the demands to standardize even the catalog, so you don't have like 5 different types of toilet paper that you have to then find out of a catalog, because there's no Europe-wide big topic. I suppose that wouldn't work in Europe. But say you have to admit on 3-layer white, and everybody gets the same stock. It's, on a defense level, we're talking billions that you would be saving. Just on that domain. So what I'm coming back to that is, but what you're not doing is too much. Is, I think, if you start digging down into what do you have in this country and what do you have in this country, in the first step, everybody will start be claiming that theirs is the best, and they will all have their personal interests that they want to bring forward. You need to have like this generalized template of what would European defense look like, what domains does it have, and what are the key value drivers of each of these domains that you want to leverage moving forward. So this framework, I think when that is in place, going down to the level of processes maybe a bit later, that's when you can start reaching out and say, okay, well, what do we have in place, and how can we benchmark and maybe then start going the next step. But this framework is super important, and it's got to be generic. It's got to be something that it can be used,
It does add in with Russell, because it does add in with the second part of the framework anyway. We talk about governance. The same logic applies there as well. And at the moment that you say, I need to merge at least the chain of command into a single way of working, because that's what you're basically saying. You're not telling every country, this is how we want you to do it. You're basically saying, listen, we're gonna standardize the way that we govern and run this operation. We're not going to tell you how to do your job, because we're just going to make sure that everybody does their job aligned to the same purpose, which is exactly the same thing within BPM. There is a higher purpose, and you need to have alignment from your strategy, which in this case would be, let's make sure that Europe is capable of defending itself. And that would mean that we would need a lot of alignment between the member states and their defense forces. And that is primarily, I would say, in the chain of command, at least at those first couple of levels, to make sure that they act as a single organism. And that's what you see in BPM with governance as well, I would say.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So ultimately, and that would be one of the biggest challenges, would be that to say, how can you consolidate the chain of command for these decisions? And that's like what you do, say, if you say centralized procurement in a company, first of all, you're defining the owner on the corporate level for purchasing, and then you start thinking about the roadmap for, let's say, bringing the companies in and standardizing their procedures and getting things to work. So the governance ownership perspective, not having to nominate it, but to say we have a certain structure of domains, and we need to centralize on a European level the ownership and the And we also have to consolidate and have one strategy vision derived from the big topic for these domains. And then you can start getting into more of a process project mode. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's
yeah, for sure. And the I had a point in mind that I was going to put in. It slipped my mind. Crap. All right, it will come back to me. It's around. Oh yeah, now I got it. So here we go. So the question where this boils down to, and it's exactly the same between countries and between business groups in a company. How much autonomy are you willing to sacrifice for the alignment on the higher level? Because ultimately, what you're doing is you're putting part of your own decision power, and you're going to move that into an aligned and aggregated body. If you say have a central chain of command that is capable, accountable, and responsible to make sure that all of the defense initiatives go in an aligned direction, then that means that some of the decision power that you used to have on a country level might shift to an aggregate level. It's the same as what you see with the European Union, of course. So politically, some of the autonomy has been shifted from the country's government into the European Union's government. Yeah. And you see the same thing with companies where you say, well, we're gonna go into a shared service mode. I think is the best example. That means that the responsibility and the accountability and decision power on how do we do finance, how do we do HR, how do we do procurement will shift from a business unit into a corporate shared service center. I think it's an analogy between the two, which is very often a very sensitive topic.
It's definitely sensitive, but it's something that in an industry is regularly overcome.
True.
Yeah, and because of I would say not always, and sometimes sometimes it takes time, change management.
Yeah.
Or maybe changing people management.
Ooh, that's a topic on its own.
Yeah, and on the other hand, even within the industry, there is always this. There's certain factors that are just different. Yeah, I think there's the whole magnitude. Yeah. You have big corporations as well, but typically, the whole structures are less complex from the total level of hierarchies. I think I could imagine in defense it must be brutal, and also how different each country is organized will also be brutal. And then again you have like this setup, just I think, which is like you have certain people that are civil servants, they have certain jobs. So where you in an industry perspective, you start streamlining, exchanging, reorganizing, even on a global level, just changing entities. And I know it costs money and effort, but doing that on a European level with say defense ministries even, yeah. And having so many like 100 people there that do not have that decision power anymore. Politically, it's just that's when the stakeholder management and the strength of the sponsorship, that's when it really comes to play. Yeah, so that's something where I think the discussion around what would be the best solution could be straightforward if you have a very value-driven, clear strategy in place for the domains. When it comes down to the design as well, I also think that really going through and say which processes should we standardize and how do we shift the roles and responsibilities and the activities around certain things and consolidate demands and stuff like that. I think that's something that is doable. Get some consultants in to really work that out based on all the experience and the processes that have been lived for so many years. But then, then we come down to the level of how much autonomy do you leave in balance to the standardization. So there definitely will be different scenarios. and in that context, there will be a lot of a discussion around, okay, I need to have control of this, and I don't want to,
Yeah.
give away
Yeah.
any of my decisions. That's something where I think maybe you could say from your experience, how do you get then to this point of the decision? That's the way we want to go forward. How much negotiating, how much diplomacy is required to make that fly without,
So
after 4 years, this being kind of like kicked by side again because
yeah,
they vote somebody else and somebody else is not pushing it anymore.
My experience on that, obviously not from the defense industry, but from the BPM side, is that if you're not capable of getting that type of alignment done multilaterally, so between the various parts of an organization. So imagine that you have 5 business units. Then normally what you would try to do is you would together with your executive sponsor, you would try to persuade the leaders of those 5 units and say, listen, this is a good thing for us to do. You try to first rationally convince them. If that fails, and only then, at a certain point in time, you have no choice than to say, we're just going to mandate this, period. But then you need a wider support in your executive level to make sure that it's not just one person doing that, but you want then a couple of these C-suite people to understand, yes, we understand that this is a reason why we need to do this. And then it becomes really a top-down game. So sometimes when you're not capable of forming a coalition, which I think is the most predominant way to go, you simply need to mandate it. Like there's like a big stick, and then you got to do this. Period. There's no choice. We took a decision that this is the best way forward, and those people get paid to take those kind of decisions. Now, obviously, between countries that's much more complex because there are so many other things than just the defense topic playing between countries, and you can see that with the whole European Union. It's very difficult to get anything really done. Besides, I'm very pro European Union, by the way. Don't get me wrong. So, but the speed of which things happen sometimes is just really slow, and for certain topics you don't have that luxury.
Yeah, and because I think each decision has to be carried into all of the countries.
Yeah, of
each
course.
of the countries, then there, the power situation is which political party currently can say, oh yes, we as sponsored support this.
Not a single one.
And now sure. Let's just change the law that we can then reorg our defense strategy and then like shift like a whole department from the defense ministry into the European kind of like stack. And then you would have like the opposition there. They will kick up a stick just for political reasons. And then, so execute the mandate and execution power of politicians is always a lot of talk and trade-offs that are happening there. And that's why the more I think about it, I think it's quite understandable why if I see how much we struggle in small company mergers and process management initiatives, that if you think that you have somebody who says, okay, you go back to your department and this, and then we talked about it, it's a good idea. Is it a good idea? Yes, it's a good idea. Well, then go back and just make it happen. And then they go back and says,
now
yes,
what?
Yeah, now what? Dear opposition, I need your votes to change the law to be able to do this and this. It says, what's in it for me? Yeah.
If you put it that way, Russell, the thing that just struck me is that it's quite remarkable then to even have something like the European Union. I mean, think about it. It started small, obviously. I mean, it wasn't 27 countries at the start. It was less than that, but it was still a significant number of countries that came together and decided together, we are going to push autonomy and decision power up the chain to something that supersedes your national law. In and by itself, that's quite remarkable. If you think we both have experience on the merger side in companies, And we're talking about two companies that might have like 10 billion euro in revenues, which is not less. It's also not gigantic. How complex that is. And if you then scale that to country size, it's massive.
And I think you're absolutely right. And I think our parents that came from that devastating situation Europe was in after the Second World War, they really, really understood down to their heart how
Yeah,
important it would be for our peace and future to make this happen. And that's where a lot of politicians from various countries have really uh, asserted themselves to make little steps in the right
yeah,
direction and to
yeah.
make this happen. And I think now the situation with your with the orange colored
Spray tan man.
spray tan man is definitely, I hope, let's say waking us up a bit to the values that we have, and that maybe we have to we have to take on that effort,
Yeah,
of yes, it'll take a long time, it'll be tedious, but it's worth not giving up, it's worth sticking up, just as Ukraine
and
is sticking up for their
yeah, yeah.
autonomy. And not everybody says,
I agree.
I'm bored, let's just give him your country, just can't you
Yeah,
just go home now and
yeah.
just give up? And he says, what are we talking about here? And yes, it'll take at least 10 years to get something substantially visible on an organizational level. I think
Yeah.
short term there will be some initiatives to really stack up the stocks on defense material. We can do a lot on short term quick wins, but I think the real substantial change and shift in the European defense structures, yeah, we're talking at least 10 years, but that's
Oh
fine.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like because it's like
Yeah.
it's the fundament of our society at stake here if we lose our defenses and Putin starts going totally crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even want to think about that. But and just trying to bring the parallel back to our main topic, which normally is process management. If you translate this into something as complex as an ERP migration, you very often see the same type of dynamic. It takes time to go through all the nitty gritty details in the midst of where do I position my decision power. So how far am I willing to shift the autonomy of certain parts of the organization? And I think that's why we very often make a distinction, Russell, between core processes and support processes. As in support processes, it's much easier to shift that autonomy up because it's not core business. It's something that you need to do. It doesn't mean that they're not important, but you need to do them as cost effectively as possible. If you do excellent work on HR processes, it probably will not give you more profit margin. You need to do it well, and you need to retain the right people, and you need to retain them, but that's not what your company is there for. It's something that you just need to do to make sure that the rest of the core business is done as good as it can be. But that core business is something that you probably leave much more to the accountability of the local entities in your organization or the local countries in the union.
Yeah. And we're talking about communication and human affairs. So we're closing the circle now.
Yeah,
And
we are.
so two thoughts there is definitely in this context of the defense, human resources is totally essential. Yeah,
Oh,
because I
yeah,
think that,
absolutely.
and in that sense, this whole initiative around a European defense has I think it would be so important to have good marketing communication around this whole topic. Why are we doing this? And the purpose
Yeah,
of the whole initiative, which we do with process management a lot as well, to get the
yeah,
buy-in with the people from, and not with people, the stakeholders, but really from the end users. If people understand this makes sense, this is going to make us stronger and more efficient, and we're standing here together, it'll play back to the realization of that we are one Europe. Yeah.
oh
So
yeah,
so I know
yeah,
we're coming over like a defensive, like, oh, we have to protect ourselves, but it could also be used in a positive manner to just show that we do need to move closer together because we have so much in common rather than we have so much differences. And
I
so
mean,
there's so
totally
many,
agree.
and in the process, the big, mergers we do, how much is so important to give the people the bigger idea over human affairs and communication, that it'll, and the initiatives we do, they sometimes take 5 years, and then they're revamped because there's a new merger, and then they start off again. And only if you constantly stick with the communication of why are we doing this? What is our vision? Where are we going here?
Yeah.
And what are the steps that we've already, celebrating what you've already achieved on this way? Only then this thing can actually maintain the momentum that you have over such a time. That's why I think for process management initiatives, it's so vital to continuously work on the communication, the buy-in from stakeholders, but also the people on the baseline saying, but why are we getting SAP in 2 years and why not now? Why is it taking so long? But they understand the whole transformation is it is a journey, and we believe in a journey not just for the short-term quick win, stakeholder, whatever, but there is something that is worth waiting for, worth engaging for, and worth following up on. And I think on
I agree.
European level, even more so. We cannot just think 4 years until the next vote. We have to clearly communicating and discussing the long journey that we're in for our children.
I like that. And I think that what this boils down to, and I like about the way that you say, listen, we have things in common and there are differences. And I think we, as a not only as a European Union, but also within companies, you need to capitalize on the things you have in common. You make that more efficient and effective, because that's where probably you will have the least resistance to make it more effective, because you have things in common. And you need to celebrate the differences. I mean, the differences, it's almost a dirty word by now, but it gives you diversity. And that typically ends up in a better decision making and a more innovative culture. I'll just give you a horror scenario. Imagine that the entire continent of Europe would have only the Dutch culture. It would be very boring, very direct, and we would have World War III within 3 weeks, I guess. There's only like 18 million that you can stand of us. But the fact that you have, if you go to Italy, it's such a different culture. It's absolutely wonderful. If you go to Finland, it's the entire opposite of the spectrum. But the people are still nice. That's what we have in common, and we still believe in democracy and all those kind of things. And you can apply that to the BPM side as well. You need to say, okay, listen, we know your business units. We have processes in common: HR, finance, IT, indirect procurement, you name them. We all do them for the same reasons. We should make them as cost effective as possible. But we celebrate the fact that you are very good in creating product A, and you, business unit, you are very good in a product B, and they're completely different. And we need to celebrate that because it gives us a diversity in our product portfolio. So I see so many parallels here. And well, go ahead, man.
Yeah, and that's something we always typically in these initiatives. If you can get to the level where you say, let's talk about that we accept that we are different, and let's try to learn from each other on what is maybe the future way forward, like an internal benchmark, a best practice, but then trying to get people involved onto that level. They say, yeah, we're one company, we have one common objective, we have one goal, and I like the way you do that. That's something we can learn of. Now, I know that in a company that's sometimes also tricky, especially if you have maybe a Dutch company there.
Tell me about it.
No, only joking. But you, of course, on a country level, you have exactly the same, like a situation where people with tradition here or there, and especially in these areas, how are you gonna evaluate that? Yeah, so there's a lot going on there, but we shouldn't forget one thing about defense that I think is quite true. Ultimately, and I think so the Americans have also shown as well, it's all about the supply chain.
Oh yes.
So if you're talking about, say, how I don't know, you talk anecdotes about, what this defense is all about. It's all around having a fantastic access to supply.
Yeah.
And the logistics around getting what you need to the right place in time, in full. Yeah. So we're talking about processes now. We're talking about the purchasing, the sourcing, and the logistics around that. If you had that on, let's forget about what uniforms you wear and who's the best in, I don't know, attacking people with a knife. Let's just forget that part, this terrible part about defense. Let's take it down to the level about actually the core success of a European defense would be totally focusing on the supply chain and having the material in stock, maybe on demand or whatever, where it has to be. Get the logistics there of the people and the material to the right place at the right time, anytime. Information management around, from satellites down to drones, whatever, technology, big time. Then if that is all in place, everybody's going to say, I'm not going to touch Europe. And that's totally agree. There the learnings from industry and also from the big armies like America, how well they've developed all their sourcing and their supply chains. That's something you say you can't do that on a small scale. That's something where you say you have to get that organized on a European level. And they're the core domains. I think if Europe should be able to agree upon, that's what we want to talk about. That's what we want to consolidate.
So recapping that, because we're going to go to the end of this episode, it's just like applying BPM principles, right? The whole framework of BPM perfectly fits onto this endeavor as well. Now, I'm just waiting for a phone call from Brussels just to ask you and me.
Give me a heads up if you get called from Brussels, and I'll
yes, I'll be in Brussels next week, but that's more like to catch a train to London. But I typically I actually drive right past the European Parliament building when I do that. But
it would be interesting, to be honest. I would love to. If you can from that level of, once you get down to the level of actually slicing, dicing, coming up with the value drivers, analyzing and designing some scenarios for how to optimize their setup and giving them methodologies for that. Give me a call.
We need to find a guest in that space, maybe.
That would be cool.
I'm sure that this episode is going to provoke a reaction from Roland Wolt anyway. He has a Bundeswehr background, so I'm really looking forward to that response. But for now, I would say, Russell, thank you very much as usual. Enjoy your upcoming weekend.
You too.
To the listeners, catch you next time. Cheers.
Take care.